Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway. Welcome to Building Wealth Together, where our goal is to help you walk in abundance and leave a legacy. It's Wealth Building Wednesday, where we answer your money questions with style and grace. To ask your question, go to buildingwealthtogether.com and click Ask JJ or leave a voicemail at 1-833-4-ASK-JJC. Let's get into it.
Hey everybody, it's JJ. I'm really excited to bring you the first Wealth Building Wednesday of the fall. This is going to be a two-parter that's called a pro rata plan for those who can't pay their bills. If you can't pay your bills, I want you to definitely listen in today and next week for part two. Today is 9/11. We're honoring 9/11, and I'd like you to take some time to reflect on the lives lost during 9/11, and not only on the lives lost, the lives lost from the first responders. I think it was about 250 lives lost from first responders, but the savings in life because of those first responders was like 25,000 people. I learned that today. I gave the benediction at our county's 9/11 ceremony, and it was so eye-opening to hear from first responders and law enforcement, especially about what they observed and what they all went through. That was really moving for me. And so I'm just going to ask you to just, before we're going to get into it, I'm not going to have a minute of dead space, but maybe you could just pause me and do a little reflection, okay? And then we'll go ahead and get into our topic for today.
I'm going to talk about what to do when you can't pay your bills. The economy is so tough right now, and it's really, really difficult for a lot of people to be able to make ends meet. And it's more difficult now than it was 5 years ago in many markets, especially like where I live right now. When my husband bought this house that we live in, it was $110,000, and now these houses are selling for almost 300,000. Some are on the mark for 300. I don't have access to the MLS to see if they actually busted that yet in sales, but I know what the market is calling for, and it's ridiculous to me that that's happened in just 10 years. But what's happening in this market is that people from very expensive markets want a quieter life. They want a higher quality of life. And they're selling off their big city homes that cost $1 million, and they're moving out here and buying property. And because they have lots of money, they are driving up the prices of what you can afford to purchase. And so those prices are high. And also because we are a couple hours from the metro, the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, you'll find that food prices are higher, gas prices are a little wonky, clothing prices and availability is also a lot less desirable. And it's because of the relative isolation in which we live. This is a growing town, y'all. We got our second Starbucks, but we're still pretty rural town, and it's still lots of land out here and a lot of distance to get to where you need to go. And so the prices reflect that, unfortunately. And I thought, now this is foolish me, foolish JJ Conway. I thought I was going to move to Texas, y'all, and I was going to be eating from the farm every week. And just like when I lived in DC, we used to get our milk and our meat from an Amish farmer who we had a group, and sometimes our group would go up there to the farm, and it was just a little co-op. So they were in Pennsylvania, and we would get our milk, fresh milk right from the farm, raw milk. We would get the cheese made with that milk. We would get the products, the meat products. And I mean, I don't know what they did or didn't do to those chickens, but that chicken, I would cook that thing and it'd be a big old mammoth chicken, like the rumors of the KFC chickens. And they'd be a big old mammoth chicken, but that we'd cook that thing and eat off of it for 2-3 weeks. Me and little one, who's now off to college. I was like, wow, I don't know. They put the preservatives in the stuff you get from the store. The stuff from the store goes bad in a week. I don't know. All I know is that it's tough times right now. And so I think I'll talk about that. But if I don't have any questions, I'll probably end on that. But if you have a question, go ahead and drop it in. I tried to access my Q&A folder, and it's that for some reason, Google products aren't letting me access right now. And so I know my logins are good. I know I paid my bills, but I don't know what's going on with that. So if you're in a situation where you've got bill after bill after bill. You've been robbing Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. You've been making the minimums on those credit card payments. You've been using credit cards to float what you couldn't afford to put food on the table or clothes on your children's back or shoes on your children's feet. And now those credit card minimums are getting high. That interest is climbing up every month. That credit card is adding another $200 to $300, $500. Even if you don't buy anything, that interest just makes it worse and worse and worse. And you might be feeling like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to pay these bills. I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. I don't know how I'm ever going to swim above this and get my head back up above water. And I've been there. I've been $800,000 in debt. And I can tell you right now, it's not easy, but you can do it. It's simple. You can do it. It's not fun, but you can do it. So the very first thing that I'm going to recommend for any of my new friends out there, or maybe some of my old friends that have fallen on hard times, if you can't pay your bills, the first thing I want you to do is to make a commitment to yourself that you are not going to keep digging this hole any deeper, that you are going to spend less than you make. And if you don't make it, you're not spending it. And that doesn't just apply to shopping. That doesn't just apply to gas in the car. That doesn't just apply to the things that we think about when we think about shopping, but it also applies to giving. And it also applies to the I deserve this items of life. Okay. And so I have a phrase that I use a lot. You know, I'm a very big person of faith. I really do believe in tithing. I believe in giving. I believe in a sustained program of giving. And if you are in a situation where you feel like you can't give, well, I understand that. And I know that God understands that. And if you share my faith, there's actually provision in the Bible what to do if you need to miss a tithe and get caught up in it. But I have found that almost every time in my life, even when I was 800 something thousand dollars in debt, I could find a way to give back unto the Lord, give back into the house of the Lord. There was one time where I found out I couldn't, and that was when we moved out of my on base house. Though ever since I moved into that base house in Barksdale in summer of 2010, they messed around with me and they said it was going to cost one thing, and then they ended up adding $1,000 to it, to what my rent was going to be, and I couldn't afford it, and so then I had to break the lease and move out. But the lease fee was 2 months, and one month I got to where I had $900 left in my account. Y'all, I had $900 left. My tithe check was $952. I'll never forget it. My tithe check was $952. I made real good money. I had a tithe check of $952, but I tell you what else I had. I had a rent of $1,100 and I had childcare of $700. So I wasn't able to pay all those three. I didn't even know how I was going to pay rent. And I remember it was the first and only time in my life where I ever couldn't pay my tithe. And sure enough, you know, I sought the Lord for that and I took care of the things that I needed to take care of and I got back on track as soon as I could. So I don't ever want anybody to feel any shame if you can't give, but I will tell you one thing. Before you give to McDonald's, give to something that's bigger than you. Before you give to the man at the coffee shop, give to something that's bigger than you. It will keep you grounded in your journey to dump debt and build wealth. Okay. But that's how do I want to say it? That's part of the process. That's a journey between you and the Lord. I remember in college, I made $40 a month. Everybody else made like $300 a month, but I couldn't afford the computer. You know, computers and the internet computers weren't so brand new, but most people didn't have computers back then. The internet was brand new. Like the internet came out that year, right? And I couldn't afford the computer. And so they said, okay, we'll give you the Air Force will give you one, but you got to take it out of your paycheck for the next 4 years, you know? And so they did. And everybody else had a couple $100 every month, but I had 40. And I was like, well, my tithe would technically be $30 or whatever it was. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to tithe my time. And I volunteered a lot at church. I volunteered a lot. I was on the parish council and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't even know how I got on the tithing, because that's really not the foundation of what I wanted to talk to. But I guess somebody needs to be encouraged on that. Okay. You can, if you really can't afford, if you really can't afford to give this month, then you can't afford to give this month. And the Lord understands that. But you're not going to tell me you can't afford to give if you're telling me you're paying cable and you're paying Starbucks and you're paying McDonald's and you're paying the nail tech. There's a lot of things that we pay for that we actually really don't need to pay for. Okay. And so that leads me to my next point. So my first point, if you can't pay your bills, is to stop spending more than you bring in. So if you're only going to get paid $200, $300, $400 next week, you're not spending $500. You're spending what you have, and you are making prioritized decisions coming from a place of power, not victimhood. You're going to make prioritized decisions about what is going to get paid. And I'll tell you how to handle the things that don't get paid. And I'll tell you some recommendations for prioritizing that. But that needs to be the mindset, is I am going to spend less than I bring in. And then the extra of what I bring in beyond what I'm spending is going to be used to clean up the mess. Okay. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing is, I'm going to ask you to, no kidding, cut out everything. Everything that you don't need to survive needs to go. If you are in a situation where you can't pay your bills, then everything that you don't need needs to go. And you would be surprised at how many bills you don't actually need to pay. I'm not suggesting you steal from the man, all right? I'm suggesting that maybe you don't need that cell phone, or maybe you don't need that this, or maybe you don't need that. I realize in today's world, it's much harder to get by without a cell phone, but you could put it on vacation mode for 2 months and just go with the internet base, a Google Voice number that's free. And for 2 months, maybe you just stop paying Verizon or whoever that $100 a month. They'll put you on a plan. It's like $5 a month. It's not free. I wish it was, but they'll give you up to 6 months of a vacation plan where they just kind of pause your service. You can still use your phone. You can get that Google Voice line. It might take some consternation to get people to call you, but hey, if the bill collectors don't have your number, maybe it's a little more peaceful for you. I'm joking, because most Google numbers I've had get a lot of spam calls. So there is that. But the thing is a lot of us think, oh, there's no way I could cut that. There are ways to exist. One time I bought something for my son. I don't know if it's still a product, and I don't know if it's any good, if it still is. But I bought this product. It was $40 for a 1-year subscription, and it was the equivalent of a phone line, and it went through the internet. Well, internet is one of those things that I absolutely think we don't need to pay for when we can't pay our bills, because you can find internet almost everywhere. Okay. And so I would encourage you to look at that. Are you spending 80, 100, 150 a month on internet? And I understand my whole business, y'all, is based on the internet. But I remember being $800,000 in debt and starting my business. And I remember writing books and doing research, sitting at Panera Bread or at Starbucks or at Whataburger. And if I couldn't afford the whatever dollar or $1.50 it was to get some hot water for tea, I would sit in the parking lot. They usually had one spot where you could use the internet. That's why I don't begrudge them now. I'll shop at those places now, because they carried me through a tough time. You can find coffee shops with free Wi-Fi. Almost everybody's got free Wi-Fi now, but you can find places. I remember writing one of my books in the foyer of Shreveport Community Church in Louisiana, in Shreveport, Louisiana. And they had this big kids play space, and every so often the baristas there would have mercy on me, and they'd bring me over a little snack or a cocoa, or maybe they'd give me a half price on a cocoa because it was getting ready to close. And I wrote most of a book there. I didn't have internet. I couldn't afford it. I was 800 and something $1,000 in debt. And so I'm going to encourage you, if you find yourself in a situation where you can't pay your bills, start slashing everything. Okay, JJ, well, what should I pay for? I'm going to encourage you, if you find yourself in a situation where you can't pay your bills, start slashing everything. Okay, JJ, well, what should I pay for? Well, I like people to pay for what's called the 4 walls. Okay. The 4 walls, you need a place to stay, and it needs to be safe. So you need to make sure that you cover your rent or your mortgage or your utilities. Okay, you need those things. Now, if your rent, mortgage, utilities, and all that is too much, then you're going to have to do what I did. You're going to have to tuck tail and move, and just admit that this is too much and move. That's the number one problem that I find facing people, especially in today's market where people took a lot of the interest only loans, or the economy was doing so well before COVID that people took out really expensive home equity lines. And now the market has dipped some because with COVID there was a spike, right? And people needed money, so people pulled money. But now those chickens are coming home to roost, right? And so now we feel like we can't even pay it. Well, at some point we're gonna have to face reality. Dr. John Deloney calls it choosing reality. And I find it to be very tough to do sometimes because reality can be depressing, especially when it's your fault. Sometimes you just didn't know. One of the families I worked with, the husband was in the oil fields. He was pulling $7,000 to $10,000 a month doing manual labor in the oil fields. The money was great. They bought them a big old house. Guess what happened? The oil ran out of that location. The company moved on somewhere else, and they didn't take him with them. And guess what happened? Now they're stuck in this situation with a $4,000 or $5,000 a month mortgage, and they're only making $3,000 a month in their new reality. So sometimes life happens, and it just happens, and we've got to deal with it. We've got to face the reality. And I get it. If you lose your job next month, and I don't want to speak evil of somebody. I don't want anybody to think I'm not speaking life, because I do want to speak life. I don't want you to lose your job next month. But let's just say something happened, and you got downsized last month. Okay, you got downsized last month. I'm not speaking evil on anybody. Somebody's already in the situation. All over the United States, there are people who are in the situation. They got downsized last month. You know what's going to happen to a lot of people come December? There are a lot of people who get fired over Christmas. I think it's the absolute worst thing. I'm like, at least get them over to the next year. But the company doesn't want to do that. They want to cut weight with the old year so they can report how they saved money when they start off the new year. Okay. So a lot of people end up getting fired at Christmas time, and it just breaks my heart, right? But let's just say you got fired last month. And you thought for a month, okay, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do some odd jobs, but I'm going to go on some interviews, and it's going to be great. And you did that for a month, and then you realize, you know what, this job market stinks. I'm not finding anything. Nobody's hiring. Everybody says they can't find good help, but when good help shows up, they don't want to hire me. And so you're starting to get discouraged. And 1 month turns into 2 months, turns into 3 months, and you've been floating everything on the credit card. And now that credit card is maxed out. And not only is the credit card maxed out, but now they're charging you the interest every month. It's growing and growing and growing and growing. Even if you can't spend anything, your balance is growing and growing and growing and growing. It's time to face reality. It's time to face reality and be like, okay, I thought I could make this work going the way I wanted to go. I thought I could make this work going the way all the people on TV told me to go. I thought I could make this work the way the guy with the business opportunity in the hotel room told me it would work. When he told me to believe in myself and put it on Hip National Bank, that old credit card, so that I could turn around and make this business $1 million next week, and I'll be able to pay it all off. I mean, don't they make it sound so good? Oh, they make it sound so good. And I do know people who make great money with those kinds of things. But most people I know are broker than broke. And so we'll talk later on in another time about how once you get everything together, we want to have a savings program. So the next time that the fire falls in your life, the next time that the rain falls in your life, the next time something goes sideways in your life, or the next time you get a gut punch in your life, you have a little savings cushion to help carry you through. But in the moment we're talking about right here, you can't even pay those bills. So we're going to cut out everything that's unnecessary, and we're going to focus on the four walls. We're going to focus on a place to live. So we're going to pay our rent or our mortgage. And if we can't afford them, we're going to drop down. If we can't drop down, we're going to rent out rooms. We're going to do something to make sure that we can keep a roof over our head and be able to get to and from work safely and cleanly. We're not going to go through winter up in the Northeast without heat. We're not going to go through without this or without that. You can live a little while without hot water, but you do need some water. You need running water. I'm going to need you to pay your water bill. Okay. So that's your housing and your utilities. All right. I'm going to need you to cover some basic transportation. Now, don't tell me you got to go participate in Porsche's new monthly. It's not new anymore. It's been out for like a year or two, I think. But they have a new lease program where you pay them $10,000 a month. And anytime you want one of their cars, they show up with it. You know, not too bad. You got $10,000 to burn and you want to look pretty snazzy, right? But if you can't pay your bills, you can't put food on your table. You're doing like I used to do, going from store to store to store to store for free samples and calling that the good life. Then you don't need extravagant transportation. And what you need is to look at your options and make sure that your options are really saving you money. I was in the DC area. I was stationed in the DC area a couple times. And one of the times my agency that I was at had a program where they covered the cost up to 180 or something like that every month of your metro fee. So they were trying to encourage people to drive to work. I mean, they were trying to encourage people to stop driving to work and take the transit to work. So it alleviates congestion in the parking lot, also is better for the environment, yada, yada. Okay. But when I calculated out from where I live, I didn't live convenient to a metro stop. I would have had to drive an hour to the park and ride and then ride another hour into town. Okay. The because I was such a far out stop, the stipend they would have given me every month didn't even cover my metro, and it sure enough didn't cover the $5 a day that I had to pay to be in the commuter lot. So it was like I might as well pay the $95 a month that it cost for me to just park in the underneath the agency. So you have to evaluate things. But a lot of times we get all in our feels and we just make these decisions and we don't stop to calculate the cost. And especially because everybody else makes something sound so good. Oh, they make it sound so good. Like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you taking the free money from the government? You know why I'm not taking the free money from the government? Because the free money from the government costs more than just spending my own money. Oh, y'all, that's a whole word right there. That's appropriate for so many situations. Oh, we might need to extract that out for a clip. But seriously, we got to count the cost, okay? So, four walls. I'm going to need you to cover your basic housing. I'm going to need you to cover your basic transportation. I'm going to need you to make sure you got utilities because I want you to have heat in winter, right? I don't care about AC in summer. I do care. I live in Texas, but I understand that that's not a necessity. Okay, it can be in certain areas if you live certain far south. But for most of you watching me, you're far enough north. You can get by for a few weeks without AC. You can go sit in Walmart for a little bit to cool off and then go to bed. All right, that sounds a little harsh, but sometimes when we're in these messes, we got to be harsh with ourselves because us coddling ourselves and us ignoring the situation is what got us here. But I'm gonna need you to cover four walls: your basic living, okay, your basic transportation, your utilities, okay? And then the last thing I'm going to want you to cover is your food. Now, again, we are not talking about bison steaks every Sunday. Now, I chuckle with my husband. We have become so bougie after my retiring from the Air Force, and now that especially now with the big one, he's off at college, so he's not eating us out of house and home anymore, right? We have so much discretionary money to spend on food, and let me tell you, we spend it and we enjoy it. But I'll never forget bouncing around between Sam's and Kroger's and whatever other stores there were to get those free samples because I couldn't afford it to feed my little one. I'll never forget being $800,000 in debt and showing up and this is so sad. This is so sad. I hate to admit that I was a fishes and loaves saint, but you know what? When I was 800 and something thousand dollars in debt, I was a fishes and loaves saint. I came to your Bible study and I took my plate home and I heaped that plate big and I could eat off that plate for a couple days. Yes, I did. That's why I don't begrudge people who come to my Bible study and eat. But you got to be at the Bible study. We take orders at the start of Bible study, and we don't feed you after the Bible study if you weren't there at the beginning of the Bible study to place your order. But I ain't gonna be mad at you. When we were at Cold Smoke, we had the college kids coming, and I would order after we were done with Bible study. We had a tab that you had to have, and you had to meet a room minimum. I'd be like, does anybody else need an extra meal? Oh my goodness. And we would order everybody an extra meal to take back with them to campus. Oh my goodness, those were good times. But there are ways to do things without spending money. And I'm not saying just be one of those people that shows up to church for food. But you know what? If somebody has a program that can help you, take it. If somebody has an opportunity where they can bless you and you're in a situation where you need the blessing, take it. Cover your four walls, take the blessings that are offered to you to help alleviate some of those pains, and then we're going to set about the process of actually getting yourself out from the mess, okay? So, first things first, we're making sure excuse me, we're making a commitment to ourselves that we are never, ever, not ever going to spend more than we make again. We are whatever comes in, that's all that's going out. Okay, make that commitment to me. You say, "Oh, if I was hard enough on times, I would do that." I offer people. I used to do this. I don't do it anymore because no one would do it. I used to offer people, I will pay you $100 a month every month that you're with me if you can give me your credit card statements every month and you're not putting anything else on there. And I would do that for like the first 3 months, like at least 3 months. No one would do it. And some people would get so offended with me that they wouldn't want to work with me anymore. So I just stopped offering it. I was like, okay, fine. You know what? I can't control that. But if you want to have peace at night, if you want to stop worrying about the bill collectors, if you want to stop worrying that you're going to come home and be locked out of your house and your stuff on the curb, if you want to stop worrying about the fact that your car might be repoed every minute, if you want to stop parking around the corner in your friend's garage or in their carport to make sure the repo man can't find your car, look, if you want to have some peace about your money and about the situation that you're in, these steps work. You got to make a commitment to spending less than you make. And then you got to cut out everything that isn't necessary. And what are the necessary things? Your four walls. Now, here's an interesting fact about the four walls. There are a lot of people who will pay their credit card bill before they pay their four walls because they don't want their credit to go bad. Let me tell you something. You're that far into debt that you can't pay your bills. Your credit's already bad. It's already bad. It's already toast. You think those utilities you're not paying don't factor into your credit? Oh, they factor in certain other ways. Trust me, it factors into your entire financial picture. Even though you don't go to the FICO website and see Verizon and Washington Gas and whatever have you, okay? So trust me, if you are in the situation I'm talking to, you can't pay your bills every month. Your credit is already shot. Don't worry about the credit. Take care of yourself. Put the oxygen mask on you first. I promise those greedy credit card companies, and maybe there's some out there that aren't greedy, but them credit card companies, they're going to be okay. Their CEOs are going to sleep well at night and their employees are going to get paid. Okay, because people are always going to be in debt. The Bible says the poor you'll have with you always. All right, but it's time to get you out of that rat race and to get you from stealing from your future and your kids' future and giving it to their future. Okay, so we are going to make a commitment. We will spend less than we make every month. If we don't have it, we don't give it. If we don't have it, we don't spend it. And here's my other corollary with that. If the Lord didn't give it to me, then he hasn't told me to give it. Oh, yeah, you better write that down. If the Lord hasn't given it to me, he ain't told me to give it. I can't believe how many times I have been in somebody's church, not necessarily my church, but somebody's church, that they're like, we need you to give that mortgage payment and the Lord will give it back to you. You can't beat God given. You know, God can multiply that light bill 40, 50, 60, 100 times. If you have faith, pay that money to the church and the Lord will bless you real good. You know what's going to happen if you pay that money to the church? You about to get foreclosed on. You about to get your lights cut off. Because guess what the Bible also says? Because given it shall be given. That's a true statement. But the Bible also says that the borrower is slave to the lender and that we ought not be a borrower. And the Bible also says, who of us who are going to build a tower don't first count the cost so we don't become a laughing stock later when we can't finish the job? I'm asking you to count the cost. What you've been doing probably hasn't been working. So if it hasn't been working, why not try another way?
Love the podcast? Be sure to like, subscribe, and forward to 3 friends. You can ask a question or take a life-changing class at buildingwealthtogether.com. Now, go walk in abundance and leave a legacy.